My wife and I have a little schoolhouse. I've been doing education about 20 years, started off in 4th through 8th grade, which I'll talk a little bit about. But I didn't always drink the Montessori Kool-Aid. So I was a relatively traditional school teacher starting out. But right now, after all this work, being a teacher, head of school, running schools, trying to build schools across the country, my wife and I now have a little schoolhouse, like literally in our house with 8 kids and my own son. And this is a picture from it. You guys can see the donkeys. That's what those are in the back. So I want to start kind of oddly talking about donkeys. All right. And then we'll get back to children, if that's okay. Yeah. So we have an acre in South Florida and we have this little mid-century home. We love it. But in the back, the neighbor has some donkeys. I'm going to show you a video of these donkeys out there.
What did he say to you guys?
Okay, so those are the donkeys in the back. Now, the interesting thing and why I'm bringing up donkeys is because these 2 donkeys actually were separated before this. So the neighbor had these 2 donkeys for 10 years separated on his property. And then he's like, there were some cows out there, and somebody said they had some cows, and they wanted the cows protected, and donkeys can protect cows and warn. So they had the donkeys out. They let them out on probably about 5 acres of land, let them together after 10 years being separated. This was a male and a female donkey. So the kids and I were out there, and the donkeys, and they were just loving. And all of a sudden, what's the male donkey doing? We have all adults here, right? Okay. So he's trying to hump the female donkey. And at first I'm like, oh, what do I say to these kids? We have 3 to 6-year-olds, They're like, they're playing. And I'm like, yeah, they're playing. So, with young Montessori kids, we don't get into like big, giant explanations. Let me tell you all about this. No. So that occurred, and it's kind of funny at the beginning, but it slowly did not continue to be funny because he kept doing it over and over. And I'm like, stop, JoJo, yelling at, with your kids, sometimes you're like, stop that. And they just keep doing it over and over. That's what I felt was happening with JoJo. And it got so bad, it's a little sad, that he ended up like causing some things on her back, and she ended up dying. And it was horrible. And I just maybe 3 weeks ago, I was out like running, like walking around our property like 9 p.m. and it's pitch dark because it's pretty far out. And all of a sudden, it's a donkey. And JoJo's like shocking me. And it just felt like this. Now he's alone and he's all by himself. And what the point I want to get across is environment is huge. When I first saw them 2 together out there, I felt like, this is amazing, right? They have 5 acres. There's a giant pond out there. It's just beautiful. But I'm ignorant about donkeys. Clearly, my neighbor is ignorant about his own donkeys. So we have to be very careful what kind of environment we're putting animals and ourselves and our children in. So Montessori, at the end of the day, it really is just a prepared environment. So this is Montessori. I was often asked, but how do you make these tinies behave so well? How do you teach them such discipline? It was not it was the environment we had prepared so carefully and the freedom they found in it. So if you guys go into your child's classroom at Mastro, like I sat in today the whole morning, are there any teachers yelling at your kids? Sit down, stop that. Stop that, JoJo. No, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but most of it's because of the environment. So that's just an overall point I want to be talking about tonight. We'll talk about a few things, but one is Montessori is a prepared environment, and we'll go through what that looks like. And I'm going to give you a peek into Montessori. So you guys will have a peek into Montessori. 2 ways we can help. I'm going to try to help you with a few things as parents. I have a 3.5-year-old. So I utilize a lot of this stuff in the house. So I thought, let's get you guys some stuff to take home, Montessori stuff that works in the house. And so there's going to be observe and empathize, which I'll get through both of those. And then Q&A, discussion, pushback. One of the big things with me is if you think something I'm saying doesn't make sense, just ask it. If you think this doesn't work in my house, say it. I like pushback. I think Q&A is usually, we don't just want all the easy stuff. And the teachers are going to come up and you'll be able to ask them about what's going on in your classroom, because they're the real ones with the knowledge about your child. So we'll have a lot of Q&A and discussion afterwards. So this is me in the 4th through 8th grade relatively traditional school. And what we had down the hall was a Montessori classroom up to 3rd grade. And then 4th or 8th were like, no, we've got this cool stuff that we're doing. We don't want Montessori afterwards. And this was like 20 years ago. I had no clue about Montessori. So we were doing this. The kids were learning a tremendous amount, but every now and again, I'd walk down to the Montessori classroom, and you guys ever look in the windows here? The Montessori little peek windows, that little thing. So I would peek into classrooms and I'd look in there and go, man, these kids are super independent. And then I would go back to my classroom. I'd be like, these kids are not independent. So I'd see 3, 4-year-olds like making their own snacks. 7th, 8th graders would go back and their parents had just made them their lunch. I mean, it was such a radical difference. I remember one is like kids would raise their hands to ask questions or, answer questions. And every now and again, a child would raise his hand in my class and I go, oh, what do you want to say? Can I go to the bathroom? And then I'd walk down to the Montessori class, and the 3, 4-year-olds, they just go to the bathroom. They walk into the bath. So something was wrong. And slowly over time, I got realizing that Montessori is where it's at. And I kind of transitioned. And then the 4th through 8th grade program ended up becoming Montessori at that school. So what I want to do is I can talk about this all day long. And I know the teachers love to talk about what they're doing in the classroom, but you got to see it. So this is an example, 3 to 6-year-olds in a class in Canada. And this is going to be a peek into Montessori. You kind of see it in action. This is a school called Dundas Valley in Canada. And I got to tell you, it's a pretty impressive school. And I was telling some of the other teachers that sometimes I'll be speaking at schools and be like, uh-oh, because this looks really good. And then the school I'm at, I'm like, it doesn't quite match this up. But you guys, I observed in the classrooms, and so much of the stuff that Jackson was doing, your children are doing. So it's a really cool environment. Anything jump out with this, by the way, that you want to like immediately say, I want to get at that? Is there anything? Yeah, that's kind of crazy. How many interactions did he actually have with the teacher? Very, very rare. It's almost like the teacher's just in the background, right? In Montessori, the ideal is that you're just there and the kids are working as if you didn't exist. Like, that's the ideal. A lot of work goes into that, so it doesn't just magically happen. But so we'll go through that. But two things I wanted to focus on were independence and confidence here. There's so much to focus on, and we're going to go through a few different elements of Montessori, but independence and confidence. And a lot of times Montessori, at least for me, it was when I first started, I was like, is this just hippie stuff? They're just playing around in the classroom all day long? And no offense to hippies. I'm just saying that was my early 20s comment, And then I just thought it's good to start out with people that are super considered, like super, super successful, like the Google founders. You don't get more like all of us use. How many of you use Google in here? Okay. So here's a comment from Sergey Brin. I came to the country at the age of 6, and I immediately went to a Montessori school, which in some ways gives students a lot more freedom to do things at their own pace to discover. Interestingly, my partner, Larry Page, also went to Montessori preschool and kindergarten. That's something we share in common. I do think that some of the credit for the willingness to go on your own interests, you can tie that back to that Montessori education. Now, I'm not one to just be like, oh, this person went to Montessori, that person went to Montessori, and it's just random. But some of these very successful people say it affected my life. And I can't say that about my kindergarten. Maybe I have one great teacher here or there, and I'm like, well, she really impacted me, but not the whole schooling. So there's something going on here. So I just thought it's good to start and give you a sense. This is not just for little babies, and it's not just, it's really impactful what's going on. Okay, independence and confidence. You saw some people clean the windows. How many schools outside of Montessori do the kids clean the classroom? How many homes do the kids clean the home, right? But it's happening also. This is a friend of mine's school in Tennessee. It happens all over the place. I was visiting today in 2 separate classrooms, kids were cleaning the windows. It was just so cool to see. Wherever you go in the world, and I've been all over the world in Montessori, this is what you'll see, kids cleaning the classrooms. Here's Jackson putting on an apron. How many of you have younger kids where putting on clothes is a challenge? No? Your kids are just magically good at putting on clothes? This is wonderful. How many of you have a challenge putting on clothes? Okay, so it's not always easy, So in Montessori classrooms, especially at the toddler level and then I go up, you see Jackson's folding in a very specific way because it's easier that way. So there's all sorts of things that we do in the classroom to get children prepared for these tasks. Like this is tying your shoes. It doesn't look like tying your shoes, but Montessori created this little thing where they can actually practice tying laces in front of them. So they don't have to be looking down like this. It's harder looking down. So it's a step-by-step process to get them tying their shoes on their own later. Right? And a couple of the classrooms I visited today, children were putting on their shoes, particularly in the toddler classroom, and it took like 5 minutes, and none of the teachers were jumping in to help them, right? Because that process is really important, which we'll talk about. What did you guys think about Jackson and his friends at 4 years old making the whole meal? Right? And this isn't your school. I think this is in a toddler classroom. Yeah, so pouring all that water at that age. In most schools, they just plump down the raisins. Here's your water, kid. Let's move on. That's not important, In Montessori, it's very important. And for independence and confidence, boy, you develop confidence doing that type of stuff. You see what's happening here? She's spilling a bunch of water all over the floor. So a lot of times in Montessori, we show you the pretty stuff, right? But this is what allows for the children to pour nicely, like Jackson. He spilled a bunch of stuff before that. So spilling is a part of it. Messing up is a part of the process. We're not just looking for, do you perfectly pour that? It's like a process. So they get comfortable with making a mess, making errors every day. They're choosing, what do I work on every day? They're messing up every day. So that 20 years later, they're not stressed about messing up, And some of us, it's hard to mess up, right? These kids, not so much. And it's because of this. So a little tip at home. How do you know when to jump in and when not to jump in? Who's got the magic answer? Nobody's got it? So nobody's figured out when to jump in and when not to jump in? No, because it's hard. And it's even hard. Like, I've been doing this 20 years. Sometimes, do I jump in? Do I not jump in? One of the only ways that we can really figure that out as teachers or parents is to observe. So that's like the magical thing in Montessori, is we step back and observe. So I'm going to show you, this is a little girl named Ruby. She's 6 months old. She's reaching for a toy. Okay, I just want you to observe. Okay, did anybody want to help her? Yeah, it's crazy. But what in there, if we're talking about just pure observation, what showed you that she needed help? Nothing. There was nothing. But many of us felt like, I need to help. So where's that feeling coming from? Maybe impatience. Yeah, I want her to get it. It's definitely coming from something inside. It's not out in the world. So as Montessorians, one of the biggest things I learned is you sit back and observe. Calm the heck down. Chill out. We even sometimes put our hands on our underneath our butts because we want to get in there and do something, and chill and observe. And one of the most difficult things, how many of you find it easier to deal with other people's kids? Yeah, right? Yeah. All the teachers like, yes. So I have this airplane. It's been very helpful for me. So the airplane, in an airplane, you look down and it's like everything's so small. You can get a lot more objectivity. When you get down, you get home like it's a big mess and you're all in it. It's very difficult. It's easier when we get objectivity, when we get some altitude. So one of the ways to do this is to get some altitude. Almost try your hardest to think of your own child as, it's almost like you need to separate yourself from this connection. It's very hard. My own son, it's harder. I would get more upset at times with my own son than any other child in the world. And it's partially the reality of what's going on inside of us, right? But the more that we can get altitude, the more that we can see this from this objective and observation perspective, man, we see so much more versus what we think we see or feel we see, So that's one of those tips. And it's helped me to do it by myself. That's a line that Maria Montessori had heard children saying, and I see it all the time. Help me to do it by myself. And it's all over the place. Jackson's 4. Help me to do it myself. He can't make every single thing in there by himself, right? He can't go grocery shopping on himself. But can he cut some cucumbers by himself? Probably, And that's what we do in schools. It's funny, I had this picture of a boy cutting cucumbers, and I was in one of the classrooms, I don't even know which one, and a boy's cutting the cucumbers. Because it's the same all over the world. This girl on the right, I think she was in a school in Florida, northern Florida, and she's growing sweet potatoes. And you guys have your own garden. It was Miss Bessie? Is that her name? Bissy, okay. Close. But you guys have this awesome garden. The kids are growing stuff. So obviously, a toddler is not growing sweet potatoes. But when you're into lower elementary, you're growing stuff. And then 3 to 6, it all depends. And then for those of you who keep your children here for that 3rd year in each, man, they are the leaders. They're helping the younger ones to do stuff. So it's just this process is a beautiful process. Thomas Edison. Montessori makes learning a pleasure. It follows the natural instincts of the human being. This is one of the most successful and creative inventors ever. He was a big fan of Montessori back in the day. And I think it's meaningful that that man says that. Now, I put that home there. The home life is really just, I put a house to say this when I'm going to be talking about the home, but this is the same. Are we doing anything different than what we do at home as parents? Kids cutting fruit. You can have your kids washing things in the house. It's similar stuff. I mean, the 3 to 6 classroom is called a casa because it's like a house. So we're trying to imitate a lot of the stuff that we can do in a house. So you guys have the amazing environment. It's just that you got to start doing this stuff. And it's sometimes teachers have a lot more patience because that's what we do, you know? And as parents, sometimes like, I got to get out of the house. So it's understandable, but to the extent you can on those peaceful days, you know, wash a table with your child, cut some cucumbers, cut some bananas. Here's a friend of mine. His son was making coffee. Let's see if it will go.
Did you open it?
Push button.
Good job. Now watch it.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people are scared of that. By the way, I just forgot, like I'm cutting so many of these videos down. Like the Ruby video was 3 times that length. So it's just, I remember it's sometimes we can't have imagine how many of you have the patience for 3 times the length of that with your own child at 6 months. But it's so helpful for that independence and confidence. So we got to start working towards it. I remember when one of these coffee videos I had posted and this lady, actually I'll put Montessori real quickly. She says, we are in the presence of individuals who are masters of their own homes. Now, clearly she's not being literal, right? How many of your 3-year-old, they can do some cool stuff, but they're not the master of the home. You know what I'm saying? But spiritually, they kind of are. They can do things. You know, so it's just an uplifted view of the children in our lives. So this was the post. I posted this coffee video. Hey, I need to start trusting my princess a little more. I think I just want her to be a baby just a little longer than I care to admit. She just started using a toaster and she's about to be 9 years old. Now, I mean, I really respect this lady because she came out and put herself out there, you know? But that's dangerous. That's dangerous. People tell me this coffee with a 2-year-old dangerous. That is dangerous. That's real dangerous. And then a lot of us have maids, okay? Maids, I'm not anti-maids. I think maids are awesome. They're very helpful. And if you have a good one, they can even be better than us at times, you know? But if you have too many maids or the maid is doing too much for your child, you are not serving that child. It's actually counterproductive. Because I've been in a lot of cities. Montessori often is very popular in very wealthy cities. So like San Francisco I worked in. People have 3 nannies in San Francisco. The kid isn't doing anything for him or herself. That's very, very dangerous. That's very dangerous. So I'm going to show you an example of how dangerous it can be. So this was a show, Rich Girls. Any of you watch Rich Girls? Oh, old school show, I think. I didn't really watch it back in the day, but I think it was probably like the late 90s. But it followed around at least one girl that was she's a daughter, I'm not going to say her name, but a daughter of a very wealthy clothing person. And the dad had left for the weekend and left her in the mansion alone. I think she had just graduated high school. Okay, now this is a girl that clearly was very pampered, very taken care of, not doing much for herself. I'm just going to play this for you.
It's a fine day, people open windows, they leave their houses just for a short while.
You know, when you kind of have like just nothingness and like not even anything to be upset about, but you just are. Dad, I'm really confused. And Dad, I just feel really lonely. And Dad, what am I gonna do with my life? I'm so confused. And I also don't want to be living at home for the rest of my life, and I don't want you to be supporting me for the rest of my life, and I want to get my own place. I just feel so lost, you know? There's no food in the house. I mean, like, parents aren't supposed to make their children's life easy all the time, you know? It's just, like, I'm not gonna, like, have you, like, there, you know, in a jiffy my whole life. You know, I had to deal with stuff like this, you know?
So it's sad. And, you know, some of us, if we have problems with confidence, I think a lot of it stems from us as children. not being able to take care of ourselves. Your guys' children, every day they walk into the classroom, they have to make a choice. Most of us, at least if you're like me, we were told what we're going to work on every single day for 12 years of our life. It's significant it's a significant impact on your life. I'm not saying this will always happen. I think we have slivers of this in ourselves from our own upbringing. So I'm not kind of pushing this girl down, but this is the danger I'm talking about, and then you compare to the children that your guys' children. It's insane. Success in life depends on a self-confidence born of a true knowledge of one's own capacities. As much as you want to tell these children, you can do it, si se puede, that's not going to do anything. So what we do in Montessori, we do it through action. The children are gaining confidence, gaining independence through action, not through words. Okay, what about academics? Any of you concerned about academics? I've been talking about dressing yourself and cutting fruits. I mean, there's more to life than that, right? Well, I'm sure when your kids grow older, some of you are going to start being concerned about academics, right? So let's talk about academics. Here's a traditional classroom. So remember worksheets, kids? A lot of worksheets. So Montessori, we don't do a lot of worksheets because we're doing hands-on work. And a lot of people tell me, well, no, this is outdated. Nobody does this. And yes, they do. And one of the things they do is they go, oh, by the way, this is a sign that says nobody gets paid for failing. You see that sign? I didn't just make this up. I walked into a classroom. We took over a classroom. We were going to turn it into Montessori at this old public school. And that was on the wall in an elementary classroom. Nobody gets paid for failing. It's insane. But, the super high prep schools, like $50,000 a year and all this. And I look at those prep schools. I go there. And in the beginning, all they did say, we have iPads for your kids and computers. All it is these worksheets put into the iPad. There's nothing creative. There's nothing radical going on. So these very wealthy parents might even be you at some point. Be careful with these schools. The fact that they cost a lot does not make them good. Now you could have a very expensive school that is good. I'm not saying that's but just really do the research because a lot of them are just doing that. How many of you are a little concerned about AI in the future? Yeah, so I usually do this talk, and just recently over the last year or so, now I'm putting stuff on AI because it's real. And I got to tell you, I love AI as an adult. There's a lot to be, but as young kids, we got to be really careful. This is, I'm not going to name names, but this is the coolest school on the block right now. There's podcasts about it, and it is your AI-powered school. A school where kids crush academics in 2 hours because it's being helped by AI, right? And then 99th percentile. How many of you want your child to be 99th percentile? It sounds kind of, well, he's smart. 99th percentile of what? Versus the other 8-year-olds in his class? Is that helpful in our lives? I don't compare myself to the other 44-year-olds and be like, am I the 99th percentile of the 44-year-olds? But this is the marketing of the hottest AI $40,000 a year school near my home in Miami, I think in New York City. Just be very careful, read and think, what are they actually promoting? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about this. But I want to change our whole idea of what academics is about. So this is some bead chains in Montessori. And it's all over the world. In your classroom, you will see the bead chains in all of these CASA classrooms and in the elementary. All right. Before I tell, what is 5 squared? 25? How many of you is immediate? How many of you struggle? 5 squared? What is that again? But we know it, but many of us just memorized that, right? So here's Montessori. Those little bead chains that they're working on. This is skip counting in Montessori. So a 3 to 6-year-old, somewhere around there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they'll count it out after a lot of work before this. Then they jump to 10. Then they 15, 20, 25. They're skip counting, okay? 5 times is what? 5 times. 5 times 5. They're doing multiplication. Now, we don't go, we're going to do multiplication now, little kids. They just playing with beads, but they're doing multiplication. And if you look up at this little square here, 5 times. That's 5 squared. So when they get to elementary and they start learning about squares, it's so ingrained in their head, it's like that. And by the way, squares are like 3rd and 4th grade and higher in traditional schools. So these kids are they are the 99% that we just don't promote it because who cares? they're learning a lot and they're loving the learning. So if you look at firsthand academics and love of learning, that's Montessori. And this is the comparison worksheet or some tech thing, the equivalent. And then you'll get some prize thrown at you in a digital prize. Hey, you did it. Keep going. That's not fun. I mean, it's fun as like a game, but it's not fun. You're not really learning and getting it ingrained in your mind. All right, and this is really quick on his reading. So Jackson is starting to read at 4 years old, and they learn phonetically. So if you look at the little phonetic words like at, mat, okay, these are phonetic. They slowly work up. And I'm just going to go very briefly through this academic, so we can ask the teachers in the Q&A if you want to go deep, because I know some parents love going deep, and other parents like, I don't even care right now, you know? So I don't want to go too far in. But here's a girl from our little schoolhouse, and she's using the sandpaper letters. So before you actually learn to read these short words, you're working with sandpaper letters, tactile, first-hand learning, okay? So she's got a little B in front of her.
Top. Yeah? Here, let's do the next label.
So she's so happy learning how to sound out words. Happy learning to read, right? And this is a girl in your school, and she's still there because I just saw her this morning. She's doing the same activity that the girl in my school in Florida is doing, and some girl in Mexico, and some girl in Dubai. It's all over the place, and they're loving it. And people say, don't make them read at a young age. Does it look like we're making these kids do much of anything? They want to do it, you know? So they're getting academics at a very young age. So that's before. And then after, this is what I'm going to go very quickly through. It's just grammar. How many of you liked grammar in school? There's not even a one hand? Maybe like, yeah, what the Montessori teachers are like, yes! You like grammar now, you Montessori teachers. So they start to love grammar. Like, this is what happens after they've got words, after they can sound out words. That's like, well, what kind of word is this? Is it a thing? Is it an action? And they start to symbolize each word with these symbols. And it helps it to be more concrete. And they start to love grammar. And then as they get older in elementary, they start to symbolize each word. So you can see walk might be that giant red circle. Okay, a noun is usually a big triangle, black triangle. So they know all of the parts of speech. They're excited to learn it, and they're labeling each thing. So you can imagine if they're doing this in lower elementary, what is their college essay going to be like? Or do they even go to college? They might just skip it and start a company. You know, like there's so many options in life, but they will be able to communicate very, very well. They'll know basic math, and they'll know how to read and write. And this is back to my little schoolhouse. They're so engaged that they're not looking at the donkeys. That's how much they're enjoying the learning. Now, they spent a lot of time with the donkeys, so don't get me wrong, because I don't think it's great if the kids are so engaged that they're not interested in donkeys and animals running outside the window. But they've already experienced that. But they just love it. This is my own son. I'm working with the map of Africa with him. He knows like half of the countries in Africa. I didn't even know Africa, I thought, was a country in my teens, right? He's 3.5. And he is not a genius. I know sometimes my son's a genius. He's not a genius. And most of your kids, if you think they're a genius, I can say this because I'm not one of your teachers, probably not, okay? Yes, and our kind of fascination with being a genius, like, what about like an all-star skater? You know what I'm saying? Like our focus is on this intellectual, academic, the genius. There's so many cool professions out there. And so anyways, he's not a genius is all I'm saying. But he knows like half of the countries in Africa. He sounds out. So now he just started doing this. He got the S or the S, and he's matching the countries of Africa. Does anybody know what the country is next to this? I know you in the back, you guys have a pass because you probably can't even see it. What is it? It's nice that you know Senegal, but no, that's South Africa. But it's cool that you know Senegal. I know Senegal now, and I'm very excited about these type of things, through Montessori. But one thing, if you notice, I got to rush through the academics so we can get on, but This takes a lot of time. This is not something we can rush, you know? So time is so important in Montessori, to just give our children a chance to enjoy and learn and not rush them. You got to get your math facts down. For what? We need to chill out a little bit. 2 weeks ago, I was at some birthday party, and there were two girls that are in elementary school, and they were just complaining about school, complaining. And one of the complaints of this fourth grade girl was, oh, the continents. I just hate learning about the continents. And I'm thinking, the continents? She's in 4th grade. That's like 9 years old. What I just said about my genius son, right? And it's sad. It's not like, to me, like, oh my God, are you, like, what's wrong with you? It's nothing's wrong with her. She just hates the approach. And that's why, because you got this. It's horrible. And again, this is what is being touted out there. This is the marketing of AI. I think AI in upper elementary in particular can help children immensely. I love AI, but to rush children to do academics quicker and quicker and quicker, why? Steve Jobs said this: I would trade all of my technology for an afternoon with Socrates. So I just want to get across to you this time, taking time, relationships. It's super, super important. And he also said, sadly, he died very young, the most precious resource we all have is time. So with that in mind, at home, academic-wise, I don't push, do extra stuff, do Kumon, do all this. Like, again, why? If your child is, quote, behind, talk with the teacher and figure out what are you concerned about, and you guys can chat about it, you know? Some things you can do at home. Does anybody know where that is? I know it's kind of a rough to see this, but this is in your area. Rock Bank? What is it called? Red Bank. But I saw this tree, and I was like, in this beautiful river behind it. And I was like, what is that tree? You know, because we don't have a lot of red leaves in Florida. Okay, we have like pine trees, and anybody know the other tree? Palm tree. So I see this. I want to send a picture to my son. I'm trying to figure out what is it. And I did all this research to find out, because that's the curiosity. Do this with your child. If you want to do academics, go out there and do it. You know, I was just in the elementary class, and they're studying the parts of there you go, venation of leaves. It's even above my head, venation of leaves. But what we can do as parents is take them out into the real world. We're limited in the classroom, you know? So get out there. And I'm going to give you a few examples. If you want your child to read, he's behind this other 4-year-old in the classroom, start reading signs. When you're out there, just things in the world, go, oh, stop. Just say it out loud. Start reading everything. And I got to say, a lot of you are probably doing some of this. So you might know more than I do. Just take what you can from what I'm saying, right? If you want your child to write really well or read a lot, just read yourself. The more we can say off our cell phones, just pick up a book. Or if you have a Kindle and you like reading, tell your child this is a book, you know, and you're reading. Just read in front of your children. It doesn't have to be some big, massive thing. Or these materials like this. We don't need materials in our home. I literally have a schoolhouse in my home, but my son doesn't use the materials at all on the weekends, because we'll just go like to Target and we talk about the money. How much money is this? He checks the things out. How many items do we have? That type of thing. It's pretty simple. Or going back to as simple as this, you don't even need to go out of the house. How many cups is he pouring into? I can see, Johnny, you're pouring into, I don't know how many are up there, 9. 9 cups. So every time you're doing something, there's math in our world. That's what math is. Math is not a subject area that we study. It is the world. So that's our approach in Montessori. Okay. I've talked a lot about academics, taking care of yourself. It sounds very like independence, confidence, self-confidence, about the self. And that's because in the youngest ages, we want to develop that strong sense of self. And that's how you really connect with other human beings. So you saw this beautiful lunch they're having. This is so wonderful. The teacher's not directing. The kids are doing everything. It's wonderful. But it starts with individual stuff like this. Like this girl's at our schoolhouse. She's pouring some beans, some dried beans. And look what happens. She just dropped all these beans everywhere. You guys still ever drop anything in the house? Or it's just the spouse? It's just my spouse that drops stuff in my house. So. So right when this girl dropped all that stuff, all these kids came over and started picking up. My wife's there, but she did not lead this. And they just started helping her to pick up everything. There was no like, be kind to your neighbor. No, the kids, if you set up the environment right, they'll do it. They'll do it. And then this boy, this is the 5-year-old boy, he's the leader and he got the dustpan. So he's aiding the other kids. And we need to teach leadership to children, but not through lectures and hurrah, hurrah. They're just the oldest child in the classroom and they become the teacher. Same in the toddler room, you know? This is one of Montessori's earliest students. Whenever we entered a Montessori classroom, I distinctly felt that a new and sweeter spirit pervaded the place and that the children were, in an indescribable way, set free. And it's really true. I've been all over the world, these Montessori, and you feel it. You really feel it. One of the classrooms today, the kids would bring up a glass of water or this, and one of the child, after the water, came up and said, "Would you like a snack?" It's so precious. But I'm telling you, it's not because we're training them to be community-oriented. It's because we're allowing them the freedom within limits to be themselves in the classroom. And then you care about your neighbor as a result, and you want to aid your neighbor. I think I'm going to skip through this class meeting, but maybe we can talk about it afterwards. Yeah. The main point I want to talk about is empathy is the last point I wanted to share with you guys as parents. So basically, it was a class meeting. A kid says, people repeating the same piano song. This one child is angry that some of the other kids are repeating the same piano song, right? And one of the things in Montessori is that we allow conflict to occur. We don't try to run away from conflict, right? Stop that. No. It's, oh, you're upset. So here, you get to empathize with somebody else. Somebody's going to say, would you stop playing that damn song? And the other kids are, but I like the song. So the more you have that communication, you start to understand the other human being beside you. So you empathize. It can be difficult at home. An easy one is just when we're at the dinner table and we just talk with our kids, about anything and everything. What do you like? What do you dislike? Just what's outside, what that tree is like, anything you want. But these are when it becomes a little bit more difficult. How many of you have this type of moment? This child's kind of losing it. Not in here, right? No. So I kind of have this picture of her with these Quest chips. You guys eat those Quest chips? No? They're like no carb Quest. I don't know. They're random chips. But I know some kids like chips. Any of your kids like chips? What do your kids like? I'm curious. What's like their favorite thing and you don't want them to eat it? Juice? Apple juice? Yeah, I don't want them drinking juice, just water. Yeah? Anything else? Gummy bears. Okay, so whatever your child's favorite food is, and maybe something that you're cool with, but not right now, put that in the bubble, and your child wants it. And they're just upset. Maybe not yelling in your face, because that reaches a different level for me. If a child's yelling in my face or hitting me, we're reaching a different level, and that's action. I'm going to talk about just feelings at this point. If your child is so worked up that I want it so badly, how do you respond? I see you're upset. I see you're upset. Yeah. So you can empathize. You say, I see you're upset. Is that always easy? No, but that first step of just saying, I can see you're upset, or I can see you really want some chips. It's so simple. I can see you really want some chips. But it can be really hard. But man, it takes so much of the heaviness off. Like, yeah, I do want chips. It's so, just that help. I'm not saying that's the answer and that will solve all the problems, but if we just start with that, it's so, so huge, right? Chaim Ganot, who I really appreciate, he said, it takes great wisdom to realize that all feelings are legitimate, the positive, the negative, and the ambivalent. So in a Montessori classroom, and to the extent that I can in my house, any feelings are okay. You can feel, you can, it's hard to say, but you can hate. Because it's a feeling. That doesn't mean you can go out there and spit in somebody's face or push somebody. But if I hate him, because if you try to push that emotion away, no, we don't hate in this house. Where's that hate going to go? Inside. And do we see it today popping up in places? Yeah, because adults are filled with hate. So we got to let it out and allow. Of course, again, there's limits. There's limits when the children act. And this is just a kind of, as children get older, it's a little bit harder to know what's in their heads. And they get like, I'm not talking to you. You know that feeling? So here it's just, you gotta get that altitude and just be like, because if it's not your child, you'd be like, oh, dude, what's up? What's the matter? If it is your child, it's like, he's not listening to me. It changes things. So we got to get an objectivity. I'm just going to go quickly through this. Can you guys see this one in the back? Do you see her face, though? Yeah, she's kind of smiling through it, right? I mean, you guys had those days when it's like you don't feel like what you look like on the other, because you're like. So sometimes we got to fake it, right? Like that's just a reality of life. We got to fake it at times, but sometimes we got to say like, we really need to empathize with ourselves, you know? So to be honest with like how we're feeling, like I literally feel like this chair. Magda Gerber, who's very good with young children, but I think her points are very good for all children. She said, be honest with your child. It's okay to say, I'm tired right now. I'm listening to you, but I'm tired. That teaches a child reality. You must listen to your own needs too. In this way, you will also help him learn to listen to his. So ultimately, we can do all this work in Montessori with our own kids. The future is going to be wonderful. Montessori children everywhere. But it will never happen if we're a giant mess. So we got to have empathy for ourselves. Yeah, I don't like how I just responded. I'm going to get better. We need to chill out and not beat ourselves up. Have some empathy for ourselves. That's where it really starts. So I just wanted to get that main point. It's been very helpful in my life and in Montessori and just with children generally. And that's all of it. So we got Montessori prepared environment, a peek into Montessori, 2 ways we can help, less stress, more joy, and then Q&A discussion pushback with your teachers. Cool? Ready for the Q&A discussion pushback? Yeah? Thank you.